Sorry. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee for the 23rd of May 2023. Before we start, if I can just go through a couple of things. So, please can I remind all participants that this meeting will be recorded and a copy archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. Okay. When invited to speak by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphones and cameras are on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the chair and/or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or grab the attention of the Democratic Services Officer or the chair. If a participant is having difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chair or Democratic Officer know. So I'd like to welcome all committee members and cabinet members and officers and anyone watching the live broadcast, and a particular warm welcome to our new member, Councillor Lloyd Selby. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to appoint our Vice Chair for this year and to consider two reports. The first report reference from Cabinet regarding the Vale of Glamorgan Local Development Plan 2011 to 2026, supplementary guidance, planning guidance, and for that we welcome Victoria Morgan. Our second report is a committee's tackling of recommendations and an update of the forward work programme. So if we can move on to the agenda, and this is to appoint the Vice Chair. Please could I have any nominations for Vice Chair and seconder, please? Okay, sorry, I'm just maximising my screen again. Okay, so I have two people who want to come for nominate. So can I ask Councillor Lloyd Selby if she'd like to come in first, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I nominate Councillor Iannucci, please?
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. And Councillor Campion, you wanted to come in as well.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Perry, please.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a seconder?
Yes, please, Sandra.
Yeah, can you say who you are? Councillor Hooper? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Hooper. Okay, so we have two people nominated for that position. If we can move to the vote. So if we take it in order of that they were nominated. So all those who
sorry,
wish...
Chair, can we just do a preference? So I go through each member. They can indicate their preference.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sure. Yes. If you want to go ahead, Gareth.
Okay. Okay. So we have two nominations. If I can ask members to nominate to say their preference, either Councillor Iannucci or Councillor Perry. So Councillor Champion, can I have your preference, please?
Perry.
Councillor Drake, can I have your preference, please?
Iannucci.
Councillor Driscoll, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Perry.
Councillor Ernest, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Perry.
Councillor Hooper, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Perry.
Councillor Iannucci, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Iannucci, please.
Councillor Lloyd Selby, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Iannucci.
Councillor Penn, are you there, please? Okay, I'm not seeing Councillor Penn on the call, Chair, so I'll move on. So
Okay.
Councillor Perks, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Iannucci.
Councillor Perry, can I have your preference, please?
Aye, I'll go for Councillor Perry.
And Councillor William, can I have your preference, please?
Councillor Perry.
Okay, Chair, that's 6 for Councillor Perry and 4 for Councillor Iannucci. Oh, Councillor Penn has just arrived. Councillor Penn, we have 2 nominations for Vice Chair. Councillor Iannucci or Councillor Perry. Can I have your nomination, please? Your preference, please? No, Councillor Penn?
Hello. Apologies for my late arrival.
But there are 2 nominations for the position of Vice Chair. Councillor Penn?
Yeah.
Councillor Iannucci or Councillor Perry. Could I have your preference, please?
Councillor Iannucci.
Okay, Chair, there's 6 for Councillor Perry and 5 for Councillor Iannucci. So Councillor Perry is appointed Vice Chair.
Okay, congratulations, Councillor Perry. I'm looking forward to working with you, in the team here. Okay, so if we can move on to the next item. So the next item, I believe, is apologies for absence. Sorry, is that correct, Gareth?
That's right, Chair. Yes, so
Yes,
it's back to the beginning now. Yes, so apologies for absence. Yeah.
So if we can have apologies for absence, please. Anyone?
We're all present now, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March. So are all people had a look through those and are happy with the minutes?
Yes.
Any points that want to be raised? No? Okay,
Chair,
that's lovely.
can we just double check that I asked for the future comparative data?
For what?
Basis?
Sorry, Councillor Champion.
It was, let me just see if I can find the item. The quarter, well, it's a Q3 positive progress, and I asked for some comparison in future presentations.
Right, okay. Sorry, Gareth, is that in the?
Yeah, I think that's been passed to the performance team, Chair. So I think Tom's considering that. I'll chase for an update from Tom.
Okay, so we can have an update at the next meeting then, or what Tom Bowring decides. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Champion. Okay, so do we have any declaration?
Otherwise approve that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to receive declarations of interest, does anyone have any declarations of interest to make this evening? No. So before I move on to the next agenda item, I'd just like to offer myself and the committee members' condolences to our fellow committee member, Councillor Ernest, at the sad loss of his wife earlier this year. So we just wanted you to know that we offer you our sincere condolences, Councillor Ernest.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and can I thank all members who've been kind enough to mention it to me and write to me in a number of instances as well. I do appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Okay, so if we can move on to agenda item 5, which is the reference. So this is for the Vale of Glamorgan Local Development Plan 2011 to 2026. And I believe that Victoria is going to be talking about this.
Yes, good evening, members.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi. So this report has been referred from the Cabinet meeting of the 11th of May, and it refers to the outputs from the members' briefing session, which was held on the 31st of May, regarding 2 new pieces of supplementary planning guidance that were prepared to support policies in the adopted local development plan. And these relate to retail and town centre development and economic development, employment land and premises. So by way of background, draft versions of the 2 SPG documents were reported to Cabinet back in September 2022 to obtain agreement to take the 2 documents out for public consultation. And a public consultation was held between October and December 2022. Following the 6-week public consultation, the outcomes of that were reported to Cabinet and a number of proposed changes to the documents were identified. At the Cabinet meeting on the 27th of February 2023, it was resolved to approve the amended SPGs for use in development management decisions alongside the adopted local development plan. However, following the meeting on the 27th of February, it was identified that a member briefing session, which had been referenced in the 29th of September 2022 Cabinet report, hadn't taken place as part of the consultation, despite being referenced within the report. So in order to allow members further opportunity to comment on the documents, a member briefing session was held then on the 31st of March. The purpose of this report today is to consider the details, detail the issues that were raised as part of the briefing session and the response to the matters raised. So at the member seminar, members had the opportunity to comment on both of the documents, so the employment and the retail and town centres SPGs. In terms of the issues raised, taking the employment one first, one of the key issues raised was around parking provision on new employment sites. And in terms of that, it was explained at the meeting that the employment SPG needed to be read alongside the council's SPG on parking standards, which deals with this issue. Members also raised comments about the need for better public transport to employment sites, working from home and placemaking. In terms of the retail and town centre SPG, members sought justification for the position of certain certain centres within the retail hierarchy. And there was a discussion around the acceptable uses around town centres and what could be done to retain those core businesses within town centres, including banks and clothing retailers. Now, the report highlights that the SPG strikes an appropriate balance between trying to provide some flexibility to allow new uses within a town centre while still retaining a retail function. The session provided members with the opportunity to consider the new SPG documents and raise any queries around their contents. Following the session, officers considered the comments that have been raised, and whilst a number of important issues were discussed, it wasn't considered necessary that there needed to be any direct changes to the SPG documents in light of those comments. So therefore, the report that was considered by Cabinet recommends that the contents of the report and the feedback made as part of the members' briefing session be noted, and no further amendments be made to the SPGs. However, should the Scrutiny Committee resolve to accept the resolution, then no further amendments would be made to the approved SPGs, and the documents would be used with immediate effect as part of the development management process. And the third recommendation is that all members of the council be forwarded by email the outcome of the public consultation, the members' briefing session, and the adoption of the SPG for their information.
Thank you, Victoria. I was going to say, do I have anyone who wants to ask any questions? I can see Councillor Champion would like to ask a question. If you'd like to go ahead.
You've mentioned that all members will have sight of the consultation, and that's not happened yet? Question mark.
That refers to, well, the document's already been to Cabinet back in February for approval. So by public consultation, we mean the results of the public consultation that's held last September.
Yes, and you haven't. I'd be very interested to see that. I've been talking to local retail people, a number of people, and they know nothing about this guidance. So I'm not quite sure what the consultation was, that's all.
The consultation back in October to December last year, we did target a number of retailers within the town centre. It also went to the Chambers of Trade, a number of other stakeholders, including the PSB and town and community councils. As part of that, it was available on our council website and advertised on social media. So hopefully we sought to go to the relevant organisations to try and get their say on the documents when we held the public consultation last year.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Ernest, if you'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Chairman. I think I'm a little disappointed that the many very valid points that were raised by the Scrutiny Committee last time have not been incorporated in some way or another. It seems our comments have been rather brushed aside and simply told that well, it's all in the document in the documents anyway, and no need to change them. My recollection of the meeting, such as it was that members were concerned about several issues that seemed entirely valid in the context, both the employment document and indeed the town centre document. And I'm disappointed that officers not seen fit to alter in any way, despite the consultations. And if those consultations did come back from the public, from chambers of trade and so on, again, it suggests to me that the format of this document was already established before it even went out to consultation. So I think that point needs to be clearly made. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Victoria, I don't know whether there's anything that you wanted to come back on that one.
So we did, well, take the second point first, but there were changes made to the document following the public consultation back when it was reported back in Cabinet back in February, and that the committee report there does set out what those changes were. In respect of your first comment about the responses from the member seminar not being fully taken into account, I think in the appendix to this report, it does specify how they've been taken into account. To a certain extent, there's some very good discussions in terms of this, but in terms of some issues, there are things that are covered in other documents. For example, there was a lot of discussion around parking and things such as that, which is actually a matter for our car parking SPG, and that's covered within a separate document. There were some discussions around, I suppose, exactly what the planning system can do in respect to this. Now, have to bear in mind, in terms of the purpose of this SPG, that it's to help to provide further information in terms of the policies in the adopted plan. Now, there have been changes nationally to allow a greater flexibility, but we are still tied to a certain extent, the local development plan policies as they currently stand. We are, as part of the replacement local development plan, looking at things again in terms of the national policy context, which has changed to a certain extent to allow a bit more flexibility. And that's something that will clearly be considered as we go through that process as well. So, as I say, there's a limit in terms of how far this SPG could go, and isn't able to change national policy or the local policies to a certain extent. And there are things that are actually outside of the control of the planning department, which are subject to a good discussion at the meeting. But as I say, only so far we can go in terms of this.
All right, thank you very much for that explanation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. I've got Councillor Lloyd-Selby, if you'd like to ask your question.
I don't have a question, actually. Thank you, Chair, because I think you've just answered the question I was going to ask, Victoria. So first of all, as a new member, I found the report really helpful, interesting, well set out. So it really helped me to understand the issues. And my question was going to be, my understanding from reading the report is that the reason this SPG has not been amended is because some of the issues fell outside the auspices of the SPG, and others, such as parking issues, are being dealt with elsewhere. So I was simply going to ask for confirmation of that, but I think you've already provided that. So I'll make that point anyway, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lloyd-Selby. Councillor Ian Perry, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, yeah. I guess the first question I want to ask is obviously a new LDP is going to be coming out soon, and we'll be looking at this SPG again, because it's been through consultation, and yet what I read here isn't in practice at the moment. So will we see changes? Now we've got this SPG, and I think about things in my own community that have been converted to housing, and obviously there's some wording in here which is a bit loose and not accurate. I mean, there's a sentence that needs rewriting in section 3. It says the Welsh Government advises that SPG may be material consideration provided it's consistent with the LDP, the weight afforded to it being increased if it is consistent with LDP policies, and has the word also should be there. It's not a very well worded sentence, but I think the word also should be there, because otherwise you're just repeating yourself, being the subject of consultation. But there's a lack of definitions on like how much weight. There's going to be added weight, but how much added weight? And when I go through it, there's all this uncertainties. It's not really clarifying a lot. And you know, you got 4.2.5 about, you know, resources and how do we share finite resources. You know, are we trying to create a more equitable society or economy? There's all kinds of little issues here which aren't answered in the SPG or anywhere else, but it's just it's just hinting at it. It talks about the Renshaw side to junction 34 as having good accessibility, but it's only accessible really if you've got a car. I don't know how many buses go there. I don't know how you get there from Barry or how you get there from Penarth. You know, and it's supposed to protect employment sites, but as we know, affordable housing trumps all that. So if you want to build affordable housing on one of these sites, that's no problem. You can do that. You might as well say in the SPG, because that's the actual reality of the matter. It talks about high quality materials without defining high quality materials. It sounds great, but what are high quality materials? Concrete, but concrete's not very sustainable. So there's another issue with that. It talks about, again, parking areas and roads, but not about really about bus stops and sustainable transport and active travel. Really, that's just tagged on in the little bits at the end. You know, you're looking at your LDP objectives again, which are really, really weak. And I hope that we have something, you know, a little bit better than sustaining sustainable communities, you know, because if they're sustainable, we shouldn't need to sustain them. It's obvious they're sustainable. So I went through this, and, you know, Landau Trading Estate, again, it's accessible by car. It's not really accessible unless you've got a car, so it's excluding 20% of the population. So, and then you've got live work units which aren't really defined, and do we really need that in there? Because a live work house is a house with a study. So there are lots of problems I thought there, and I welcome it going back and having a new document in 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I don't know if you want to come back on any of those points, Victoria.
Obviously a number of points raised there, which hadn't been raised, I don't think, as part of the previous members' engagement session. I think I'll just comment on specifically this issue of, I suppose, a material consideration. Well, the weight afforded to it does well, a planning application should be determined in accordance with the development plan. The SPG, in terms of that, helps support that. Obviously, every case will have its own merits, and it needs to be weighed up against it. So, I suppose the aim is not to be so prescriptive that there's no flexibility in terms of what's going to happen there on a particular scheme, because what we don't want is a number of, I suppose, long-term empty units in our town centres and in terms of our employment. So it's about getting that degree of flexibility while still fitting within the general ethos of the policies within the plan.
Yeah, thank you. And I suppose I would say, you know, sort of talking about using good quality material. I mean, I would assume that everything has to fit within the Welsh Government's ideas of what to use when you're providing high quality buildings and stuff like that. So we have to actually align with what the Welsh Government set down. So even though it might just say that we need high quality materials, those high quality materials have to produce a building that fits in with the sustainability and everything like that as well. So as in, sort of the homes that we build, they have to fit a certain criteria. I'm assuming that buildings for business have to fit a certain criteria as well. So it might be sort of a minimum saying high quality materials, but we take it as read because we have the Welsh Government sort of policies, procedures to follow. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yes, definitely. I mean,
yes.
Again,
yes.
The type of material will depend as well in terms of its location. We don't want to be so prescriptive in a document that specifies everything. I mean, the general ethos in terms of this is to ensure that building materials are as sustainable as possible, but it's that level of prescription really.
And the completed buildings align with what Welsh Government have already set down.
Yeah,
as well.
Yes, in terms of building regulations and things.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Perry, do you want to come back in very quickly?
If I can, in terms of high quality materials, we should be using reusable building products. Yeah, so you're building things to deconstruct, so you reuse the products. There was an example of the World Cup where the containers were used to build a stadium, and that could be potentially shipped around. That's the sort of ideas.
Okay.
That is missing from there. And like I say, you talk about high quality, but what about low carbon? And if it's higher carbon, then it needs to be reusable in a reusable product. So we need to start taking sustainability a little bit more seriously, rather than just saying it's high quality, end of. That needs to be defined, and we need to actually start building things sustainably and actually mean it.
Thank you. Councillor Ernest.
Yes, Chairman, just a point. I'm very interested in the discussion you had a few moments ago about buildings have to conform to Welsh Government guidelines. I dread to think if every new building, every new house was built on the model of what Welsh Government tell architects and developers what to do, maybe that isn't what was intended to be said. I understand the question of suitable materials and such things as insulation and sustainability, but surely we're going to allow in our plan architects and others to have a little bit of freedom to put up fine buildings. There's so many rotten buildings around the place that I would happily see demolished this evening. Let's hope that the future for the Vale of Glamorgan is rather more aspirational. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. And yes, more clarification from myself. I suppose how we've sort of redeveloped the council housing that we had to ensure that it fits environmentally with heating and things like that. And that is the sort of idea, not that we have all the same sort of type of building of one bungalow that fits everybody. It's more about how we actually make sure that it's heat proof, things like that. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Councillor Penn, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Coming at this as a builder, architects and builders can work as long as they work within regs and to policy, then they can pretty much do, as long as they've got, as Auntie and Councillor Ernest probably knows, being on planning, I think, are you, Anthony Ernest? That as long as they work within the rules, then actually, and they've got planning permission, then they can build whatever they want, as long as they stay within the rules. It's not as draconian as I think he's painting it to be. I know this from experience, and the variety of buildings that do go up in the Vale is quite broad. And there are some lovely buildings. I agree, there are some shoddy buildings that should be pulled down and new things put up. But most builders, well, all builders, work within the rules that are existing.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else's hands up. So I suppose the only thing that's come out of here, and I wondered whether, Victoria, you could guide us, because I take on board what Councillor Ian Perry said about sustainability and reusable materials and products, and whether that fits into the SPG or whether it's more to do with the LDP.
Yes, so the SPG does obviously cover the excuse me, the wider issues around the material side of it. The policies, any planning application would need to be determined again in accordance with other policies within the local development plan, and also in terms of building regulations, which are looking for obviously increasingly higher levels of energy efficiency and things of that nature. So what this SPG couldn't necessarily do is go over and above what building regulations and our policies in terms of the current adopted LDP are going to do. This is something we're looking at as part of the replacement local development plan, and in terms of making sure that the policies within that take into account issues around climate change, energy efficiency, and in terms of design, or of a high quality design. So any planning applications that come in at the moment will be determined against the wider suite of policies, including those on design, and as I say, alongside building regulations. So I don't necessarily think this is something that needs to specifically be referenced within the SPG as well, because it is covered elsewhere in planning policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Victoria. Councillor Champion, do you want to have one final comment?
Just sort of a query. I think it was raised by Councillor Perry. When was the last guidance document produced, and when will the next one be produced? Is there going to be a crossover with this new local development plan?
Yeah, so these are new SPGs to support the LDP policies.
Yeah, so when was the last guidance produced, or was there no guidance?
There wasn't any specific guidance in respect of employment. There were some area specific SPGs in terms of retail, specifically around, I think, the Upper Holton Road area, that these documents would supersede. There was a specific design guidance in terms of retail, so that supersedes a lot of those documents. And in terms of your question, in terms of how
so when would this be reviewed?
Alongside the local development plan, so we'll make sure that these are updated to reflect policies, emerging policies in the replacement plan. So once they're in place, we'll look at any differences in terms of the documents to make sure that the two things are kept in keeping with each other then.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I don't see any more questions come forward. So if we can have a look at the recommendations, so we are going to remove sort of pass these recommendations, that we approve these on this committee, as Victoria's gone into detail about, what is included in this SPG and what's included elsewhere. So are we happy to note these recommendations? Yes, I have someone saying yes. I've got two people saying yes. I'll take that, as I don't see anybody objecting that these recommendations are taken on board by this committee to go back to Cabinet. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Victoria, for your time tonight and going through this. That was very interesting. Thank you. Okay, so if we can move on to agenda item
6. You're muted, Chair. Chair, you're muted.
If we can go on to agenda item 6, and that is for the Report to the Director, fourth quarter scrutiny recommendations tracking 2022 to 23 and proposed annual forward work programme schedule for 23 to 24. So Gareth, I think you're going to go through this, aren't you?
Yeah, Chair, I can take this.
Thank you.
So if I can refer members to appendices A, B and C, and they relate to previous recommendations. And as members can see, all actions have been completed. But I just want to highlight that we've had two very interesting site visits over the past 2 months. The first to the waste transfer station in Cowbridge, and the second to the waste and recycling centre in Barry. And on the back of those, we have now arranged a third visit, arranged for the 14th of July at 10 AM to the Viridor plant in Cardiff. So I'll be going from the civic office. So we're looking to arrange a minibus on the 14th of July. So if members can note that in their diaries, and I'll send further details out over the next day or two. If I can move on to, so I've just asked members if they are happy with the statuses as outlined in appendices A to C, Chair, before I move on.
Any comments from anybody? Is everybody happy with those? Yes, I don't see anybody objecting, so I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, I'll propose that, Chairman. Move that.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just moving on to the committee's work programme. So this is the draft for 2023-24. Members will see Appendix D is the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. So we have used that to draft our committee work programme, which is attached to Appendix E. And I suppose, as we've all mentioned tonight, Chair, we have the LDP down for scrutiny at our October meeting. So I'm sure members will have a keen interest in that, and also it'll be quite a high-level public interest topic. Also for the October meeting, Chair, we do have scheduled an update from Colin Smith on waste collections, but obviously given the nature of the two items, Chair, I'll probably try and move Colin's presentation to September, so we we've got time to consider the LDP in full.
Yes, that's a good idea, Gareth.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And then just to highlight that the report refers to a review undertaken by Scrutiny by Audit Wales, Chair, and that review indicated that topics for consideration should have a clear rationale and be outcome focused. So as a committee, we can look at topics for in-depth review, Chair.
Okay.
And so I would ask members if they have any topics or suggestions of areas they would like to look for further in more detail, and then we can consider them, Chair. And if there are any suggestions, they need to be forwarded to the chairs and vice chairs group for closer examination, so they are aligned to corporate priorities. So,
thank you.
Yeah, if you have a discussion, Chair, it'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Could I, as Chair, actually bring something forward? So, Councillor Ernest, I can see that you've got your hand up, and Councillor Champion. If you'd like to sort of go forward, I also have a suggestion as well. So, if you'd like to go forward.
Yeah, mine's a very simple one, Chairman. The council and the public have been promised a tree strategy for a long time now, and in my part of Penarth, with very many trees, some of which have died, some of which are overgrown, some of which are absolutely splendid. And I understand the tree policy or tree strategy has been in the making for many months, in fact long before the election last year. Could I ask, because I know that document is near to completion, that we have a report to committee in July, because I think this needs to be determined before the autumn and the time when work's undertaken on trees, good or bad.
Okay.
That we'd have a report to the July Scrutiny Committee, which will update us on the tree strategy, or better still, Chairman, if we could have the draft strategy put before us, because I think most of it is already written. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Perhaps, Gareth, would you be able to look into that and see how near to completion that they are? Because I think it's worth having the completed one in front of us.
We're up with that, and if we can update, perhaps July, Chair, but as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Champion.
I don't know whether we can scrutinise how we're dealing with sort of the redevelopment of high streets what the council's looking to do there, because I think the high streets are really, really important.
Thank you, Councillor Champion, and that actually leads in to what I want to propose. So I want us to actually undertake a task and finish group within the next year. I think we've had a year here where we've had the chance for new councillors to bed in and to understand what the Environment and Regeneration Committee does, obviously with the exception of Councillor Lloyd Selby, but I'm sure you'll soon get the swing of Environment and Regeneration. So what I really want to focus on, and this is just a working title, is around 15-minute communities. And I think as we are such a big scrutiny committee, if you think that we have two directors that report to us, so the Director Marcus Goldsworthy and the Director Miles Punter. So one's for environment and housing, the other one's for place, and everything that encompasses. So it encompasses the economy, regeneration, and the economy, businesses, employment, regeneration, so our towns, and especially after COVID, I think it's important that we do look at that, like you have mentioned, Councillor Champion, but also around housing and having housing that's, fit for purpose and things like that. We also have sustainable transport, and we have the tourism, we have countryside. So, all of those things actually come to this committee. And I think it would be good for this committee to have a scrutiny committee where a task and finish group, where we can have the time to actually look at this more closely and report back that will then come to this committee and then go to Cabinet. Obviously, what I'm asking for this evening is for your approval for me to take this to the Chair and Vice Chair meeting that's next week, to ensure that we can go ahead with this, because I'm sure there's members of other committees who may be able to inform us of the things that we want to actually achieve. So the 15-minute community looks at work, shopping, education, healthcare, leisure, and any other amenities a person may need within their regular daily life. And I think this committee is best placed to actually look at that. But obviously, we need to make sure it doesn't clash with anything else that any other committees are doing as well. So if I can have your approval to take that next week. Obviously, what I would like you people to do today is, if we get that approval, is to think about who would like to volunteer to be on that committee. Now, it is only a few members that would be from this general scrutiny who would go on the task and finish group, and I would really like it to be a cross-party task and finish group, so we get the views of all the different political and independent members within that report. It generally can take anything from 6 months to a little bit longer. There is a commitment there from councillors to attend these committees, because we will be getting people from outside bodies to come and speak to us about the various different things. Generally, but not always, they can be held in the daytime as well, but it doesn't always have to be the daytime, but just so that people are aware that they tend to be in the daytime as well too, because we're actually asking people from outside bodies to come and speak to us. So rather than ask them come along in the evening, we ask them to come within their working day. So if people can think about that, if anybody would like to be part of it this evening, they can raise their hand. But yes, if people are happy for me to take that to chairs and vice chairs committee next week, and then perhaps we can have a fuller discussion at the meeting in June. So I've got Gareth, if you'd like to come in first, and then I've got Councillor Champion, Councillor Ernest and Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Just very briefly, Chair, I think most of the stuff you mentioned were actually relevant, but I think we do need to be careful about crossing over to other scrutiny committees, for example, education and housing.
Yes.
So I think we may have to probably take those points out and just focus on the committee's remit. So, but it's still quite wide ranging, and obviously if we do uncover anything, Chair, that is relevant to those committees, we can refer issues on to them for further consideration.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. So, Councillor Champion.
said it's 15 minutes. Is that 15 minutes within the home, or what's the 15-minute referring to? And did you have sort of this idea? It might have been an idea to sort of circulate this before, so we had a bit of a briefing before this meeting.
It isn't really something that I would brief people about before this. I am allowed to sort of come in and say that I would like to try and do this, and it's for people to think about and consider. Also, the 15-minute, yes, it would be within the environment that they live, but obviously we also have the rural Vale that we need to consider as well, and what, you know, it might need to be adapted for the rural Vale, because where some people live might not have the facilities within 15 minutes of where they are, but that's a working title. It isn't the actual set title. Okay, Councillor Ernest.
Yes, Chairman. Believe it or not, I'm very happy to support your proposal to committee this evening, and I will, as the spokesman in opposition, I'll put my name forward for a member of that committee as well. I'm sure others will join us, but that's for them to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest, and I appreciate you saying that you support that. Thank you. Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to echo the comments that have already been made by Councillor Ernest, I very much support the proposal. I think it's timely. Obviously, be interesting to see what the discussions are that come out of Chairs and Vice Chair meeting next week. Hopefully, there'll be across the board support for what feels to me like a really important piece of work at the moment. And as a town centre member, I would be very, very keen to join the task and finish group, the working committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd-Selby. I can't see anybody else's hands up, so I'm assuming that everybody is happy that I take that to the Chairs and Vice Chairs committee next week. Chair. Thank you. Okay, and I take on board what Gareth said as well. So thank you, Gareth, for your guidance.
You're muted, Chair.
I'm having one of those evenings. Thank goodness you're here, Gareth. So I don't think we have anything else to discuss this evening.
Just a note, Chair. I'll amend the forward work programme, Chair, and we'll upload it to the council website when the minutes are approved.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you everyone. I don't have any sort of urgent business under part 1, and I don't have any urgent business under part 2. Thank you everybody for your contributions this evening. Congratulations again to Councillor Perry on being Vice Chair. I look forward to working with you, and thank you everybody, and I'll see you at the next committee meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good night,
Chair.
Chairman.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.